Hey there, gang. This afternoon, we're in Wabash, Indiana. We're about 100 miles north of Indianapolis being south that direction. And we're at a cemetery called Falls Cemetery, Falls. And here in Falls Cemetery, there lived a family in the cemetery, the gravedigger. Robert Hall was his name. He's passed on along with his wife. But they had an infamous son whose name is Larry Hall. And Larry Hall, well, let's just say that he's, in addition to being a serial killer, convicted, rapist, torturer, possibly, probably, dismemberment expert, necrophiliac. 1982 to maybe 92, 93, he killed several young women between the two states here. And we're going to be talking about his story. But why are we here at this cemetery? I mean, the parents are buried here. This is where they grew up. This is where he's from. There's a couple of connections here that I found very intriguing. I wanted to see this place. Now, there's a movie that is on Apple TV. It's a series actually called Blackbird. I don't know if you've seen it, but I put it on and it is absolutely captivating. It's the true life story of Larry Hall and what he did, and it's pretty factual right down the line. But the crux of the movie is about, beyond the murders and him getting caught, is they could never find any of the women, the victims. He would never share where they were located, but he had it up here. And they sent in a mole from the FBI, sent in a mole, another prisoner, get out of jail free card. If you can go in, break down the barrier, the ice wall of Larry Hall, get in his head, become friends, and find out, for the families, we want to find out where these young women are. Where are the bodies? He won't tell anybody. In fact, of course, he recanted, won't tell anybody anything. So this guy named Jimmy Keene, takes the deal, goes in, and I'm not going to get into too much of it, but in the end, he was successful to get something that showed on paper, and then it got all screwed up. I'll just leave it at that so I don't ruin the movie completely. But what's interesting about this is that in the movie, there was one part that captivated me to come here and see. It's like when people are buried alive. I've done a lot of stories. I want to 1800s, 19. I want to go to the location and go right here. This is where at night they were. This is it. This is the place, and this is what happened. We're standing on this ground, and there is a place here within the cemetery I want to walk you to that is kind of a similar thing relating to his crimes, because in the movie they said that, or they showed that his father was the gravedigger, Robert, and he would take the boys to help dig the graves. And starting at 12 years old, that was what they did. But in the movie, and that's probably why Larry got morbid and into all this, maybe the dismemberment. There was other prior warning signs. But when he did, in the movie, it showed that they were also, when they did the burials, they would come back out of the house at night and dig up the bodies to steal the jewelry. And in the one scene, you'll see Pudgy Larry as he was down in the pit with the body. And I'm not going to say what happens, but it's gruesome to get the rings off and stealing jewelry. And I really did a lot of research to find out, did that really happen? And it may have. I'm not saying that it happened, but movies, it's a movie. But this movie followed the book written by James Keene, where Larry Hall opened up, and I guess he knew all this stuff growing up, and they put all this stuff together in the book, all facts. In the book, it didn't mention that they were grave robbing, but in the movie, they did. And you say, well, it's a movie, but I did the research I did from the source I saw. It said that the screenwriters, in addition to using the book word for word, fact by fact, they did their own research on this specific thing. So I don't know what that means, where they got this information. I'm not going to speculate. You can speculate. So could have happened. And then I take that to the next step and, well, let's take a walk and I'll tell you a little bit more about this story. We'll zoom it out and have a look around. And yeah, there is a purpose for me coming here. I don't want to go to the parents' grave. I don't want to open up wounds or anything like that. And I want to be very sensitive to the family. And he has a twin brother named Gary. And Gary was really a good guy. Larry did all kinds of bad stuff as a child. He was slow. Everyone thought he was stupid. He had a low IQ and he'd do weird stuff and not fitting in school. And Gary was always trying to help him. And what did Gary get as a reward? Well, Larry tried to kill him as a child several times growing up. So this Larry guy, what a piece of work. So they grow up and Larry becomes, well, they both became Civil War reenactors and they really got into it. And Larry had this tan van, brown striped van, and he would go in the areas where he'd prowl for young girls. Where would he go? He'd go to these Civil War reenactments in these small towns during the summers, and he would prowl around and really creepy stuff. And of course, he ended up picking up hitchhike girls, tricking certain girls and young women, and they would disappear. And then they caught him. He went to prison and all that. So don't know where the girls are even to this day. But I started thinking about, I started thinking about the cemetery and, the way cemeteries are, just like where we're coming from, I started thinking, this is the older section. And I started thinking, boy, if they were, Larry was born in 1962, the boys, both of them. If they were 12 years old, that's 1974. Not hard to figure out. And, the way cemeteries are, the older sections are typically up front like this. And the newer sections, as people get interred, buried, goes further and further back. So I started thinking, I was like, if they were helping Dad and doing all this stuff, and if it was getting nefarious, and they were indeed, I should say, if Dad was stealing jewelry from the bodies, I don't know. I'm not, like I said, I really want to repeat, I don't know this, but I'm hoping that when this comes out and everybody sees it, that we're going to get some answers back. Because the movie scriptwriters, if you read between the lines, and maybe I'll put the link in where I found my source, it kind of says, hey, they got it on their own. But it doesn't say that. But it's like gray area. But anyway, I started thinking, if they were doing that, go to the part of the cemetery where the people were buried in the 1970s, and see where this nefarious stuff happened. Now, whether they were robbing the jewelry out of the graves, they would dig them up the next evening or the evening after the burial, fresh dirt, and then rebury them right away. Very easy to do, right? Or not. The boys were helping, and this right across this road right here, section N is in Nancy. It's my best guess is this is where it happened. Now, the house, and it's really like a garage now. I'm not so sure that's the original house. I kind of deduced that just by the dates. You know, I see a lot of 1970s, you know, like here, 1974. You know, here's another one. You know, there's some newer ones sprinkled in here where people had bought, but there's just a lot of here's 1979, 1974. This is right in the wheelhouse. I mean, I shouldn't even say wheelhouse. These graves that I'm showing you were dug by the Hall family. Whether they were raided or not, I guess we'll never know, but maybe, you know, I really want to hear back from you. Here's one from 68. Here's another one. Look, 70. So these are all, this section is kind of where all those years are. James, 1974. So James was buried by the Hall family. Let's see if we can find another one. There's some newer ones. There's another one, 1976. Yeah, look at this. George E. Harden, 1976. 50s. So George was buried. Here's another one. Edith, 1974. So, yeah. So anyway, I really was curious to find out what the deal was. I should say I am curious to find out what the deal was, and if anybody knows, please put it in comments. I'm going to purposely not go to the parents' grave because I want to respect the family. They must have been mortified because they were good people, and people here are good people. So, all right, guys, I'm on a Midwest little trip here, and I'm heading towards Indianapolis. I'll see you on the next one, and let me know what you think. All right, thanks.